was interested and dialed in. So yeah, so let's just have a look at some of the highlights. We can just maybe move on. I think from an operational point of view, we're pretty pleased. If you look at the revenue at 8.9 billion, up 12% compared to the year before. I think the question was asked, we had a substantial increase in revenue if you compare 2020 and 2021, and Shabana will, graphically show you a lot more of that. So from an operational point of view, pretty pleased. Absolute terms up 12%. EBITDA down 12%, and Shabana again will go into a lot more detail there what the reasons were. But basically, in broad, it's a bit of margin pressure in the last couple of months of the financial year, and then the sudden depreciation of the rand prior to year-end negatively affected our operating results. But if you look at it from a gross profit point of view, again, absolute terms up on the year before. Headline earnings per share, as I discussed, affected by mainly by the forex adjustments. Net asset value per share currently standing at about 24 rand. We're trading at 14, so and I think we'll talk to the share buyback maybe a bit later on why we still think it's earnings enhancing, and definitely enhancing from a group point of view to continue with the program. And then once again, from an operational point of view, pretty pleased with the cash generated from operations of over 300 million. And that obviously allows us to continue with the share buyback, and more importantly, I suppose, for a lot of investors on the dividend policy as well. Dividend per share declared 76 cents after tax. It's probably going to be, I think, 60.8 cents to the individuals involved. That's not registered for tax. Just a bit of an overview for people that might not be familiar with Mustek, and I'm sure there will be some. We were established in 1987 by David Can and some partners. I started operating in Ga-Rankuwa, mainly as the importer and distributor of computer components in those days. As we evolved, started assembling PCs and branded the Meister PCs in the early 1990s. I remember in those days there was still a lot of sanctions, so the multinational players weren't really in the market. But I think we've managed to establish a brand that's well recognized over many a year, and specifically on the desktop space where we initially started trading. And we grew from there. We listed in 1997. It was actually a spin-off out of Baobab in those days, which later became African Bank. And I joined the group then just basically after the listing on the JSE in 1997. Our main line of business still today, although we've got some diversification that's been happening over the last couple of years, is we're a distributor of IT products and services. And we'll go into a bit more detail of how the group has evolved over the years and where the services legs do sit within the organization. We are head office here in Midrand. That's the picture that you might be seeing of our building where we're sitting. And then we've got offices in every province in South Africa except for Eastern Cape, where we've got two. We're in Port Elizabeth, or Kebega as it's called now, and then East London. Small investment in Zimbabwe, which with all due respect is just basically trying to tick along and saving the jobs. And then an investment in Kenya, which is doing reasonably well, but quite difficult trading environment that they're finding themselves in. So that's one of the initiatives that we need to look at on the way forward for Mustek. So if we can just go from a group structure, just again, for the people that's not aware, Mustek Limited is the consolidated holding company that reports the results. And then we've got four main lines of business within the business on the distribution side. And that's probably where you're getting 95, if not more, of your revenue that we do publish is from Mustek and Electron. And Niels will go into a bit more detail, although he won't split the product between the different divisions. But just give you some sort of idea of what products we do distribute. And how we rank them and how they fit within our organization to try and give a total solution to our customer base out there. On the training side, we've invested in a company called Meister Internet, and once again, leveraging on the brand that's been established over the years, and we've seen that even in the solar or the battery space, where the Meister batteries are very well received. I think we've established a well-recognized and trusted brand over the years. Meister Internet done exceptionally well for us. I think in line with the needs in the environment, huge skills shortage, not only in South Africa for qualified IT people, but we've seen it worldwide, where there's actually international students enrolling for courses. So Meister Internet on the training side doing well, and we do expect some good results from them going forward, at least the next couple of years. Based on how they've performed and achieved over the last financial years, and what their order book and the subscription for new courses and some of the new learning material and learning rights that they've actually obtained over the last couple of years. On the manufacturing side, Yoa, that's a fiber optic company. They are operating out of Dubai Airport in KZN, manufacturing fiber cable. Again, we've invested quite a bit of money with partners from overseas, which is rated the number YOFC, which is the rated #1 fiber manufacturer in the world. They are joint partners. We've got 25.1%. Done exceptionally well. I think what we've seen the last couple of months, well-received product, great quality and availability of stock because it's local. Their order book is phenomenal to the extent that we probably be considering expanding their facilities that they're currently running. They're doing about 1 million fiber kilometers, or their capacity is 1 million fiber kilometers per annum. They have over 90% of the capacity. We estimate over the next couple of years that the requirement might be as high as up to 2 million fiber kilometers per year in the local market, with some going to the African continent, which is obviously a territory which we haven't really addressed, and there's a lot of demand for the product coming from the rest of Africa. Being situated in Dubai Airport obviously gives the opportunity to execute quite quickly from an export point of view, to satisfy the needs of those customers. Then Continuous Power Supply is still a fairly young company. They manufacture server racks and cases. That's quite excited about the future opportunities that might be there. And although we've got Mustek there in manufacturing, we don't really manufacture. The closest we get into manufacturing is assembly, and that's basically the assembly of our desktops. But I think with the added advantage with the assembly line which we do have, and the rules and the regulations and compliance with ISO certificates, and the multinationals allow us to interfere with their product without voiding warranty, which is a value-add service that we can provide for our customers. So we can up the memory or hard drive or whatever the case may be, and there won't be any effect on the warranties. Then on the service and support side, we've invested in a company called Seasware IT Africa. Did well up until fairly recently. Unfortunately, we've got some challenges there with some fellow shareholders, which is making it quite difficult to trade. Contracts that they do have doesn't get renewed, and they're battling to get new business. So that's something that I need to address in the foreseeable future. Kaulisa, also a small service and support company, historically very focused on the SA Police service contract, which unfortunately they lost. So we've got a bit of a challenge there. And on the Mustek side and Recton, we've got a service and support leg within, obviously, to look after the products that we do distribute and make sure that we do give the necessary service and support to our customers. And part of the reasons why we've actually got offices in every province as well is to get closer to the customer, as it helps us to give better service and support, but also from a logistical point of view, having a certain amount of stock and technicians on site, and we don't have to move the equipment up and down if the first level of support and fixing can be done within the regions. So that's basically from a group point of view. We're going to have a questions and answer session once we're done here. So please, if there's any more questions, please ask, and feel free to ask us. If we can't answer it immediately because we're running out of time, we will make notes of the questions, and if you don't mind giving us your details, we will respond to you directly then. If there's another way of responding so everybody can see it, we'll try and do that as well. But that's basically what we've seen over the last financial year. Just a bit of background on the group and the group structure, and then a bit more detail. I'm just going to ask Niels then to have a look at from a Mustek and Recton point of view on the distribution side. What are we all about, and what do we do there? Yeah, apologies for that. I believe there was a bit of a hiccup from the audio when I introduced myself and my fellow presenters. So I don't know how much you've heard, but let me just start in the beginning. My name is Hein Engelbrecht. I'm the Group Chief Executive of Mustek. I was appointed at the 30th of June this year after the sad and untimely passing of David Can, our founder and CEO. I've been with the group for 25 years. October will be 25 years. I started off in 1997 as Group Financial Manager, moved on to Group Financial Director in the early 2000s, and assumed the operational responsibility of Mustek Limited in 2008. And then, as I said, with the passing of David, the board asked me to, well, first at the interim point as the interim CEO, and then formally appointed myself effective 30th of June of this year. And the reason why I'm giving it is just to give you hopefully a bit more comfort that myself and Neil specifically, but Shibana to a lesser extent, we've been around. We know the company. We'd like to believe that what we built over the last couple of years, we've been a part of it. We weren't just running around executing. We're strategically involved, and we're pretty proud of what we've achieved. We've been left with something and a position that comes with a big responsibility, and I'm definitely going to take it forward. And even if it's just for the sake of the people, it is not necessarily for the sake of David's legacy, but for the nearly 2,000 people that's dependent on the decisions that we do make. We're taking it very serious, and hopefully we can take it to next level and higher levels than what we've achieved so far. On my left-hand side, Niels Kutsia. Niels has been with the company for 21 years. Started off as Group Financial Manager, basically followed me as, when I moved as to FD, he became Group Financial Manager. As I moved from FD to MD, he became the Group Financial Director. And now, once again, when I moved on, Niels became the Group Manager and Director. Also been involved with the company for many, many years, been Executive Director for many, many years. So understands the group, understands the business, understands the people. So pretty excited, and I'm sure he is as well, with a new challenge and the opportunity to take it forward. And then on furthest left and your right, Shibana Abubakar Ibrahim. She joined us about 2 years ago as Group Financial Manager. We've asked her to take on the responsibility as Group Financial Director, as we moved within the organization. She's not unfamiliar with the group. Before she started us, she lectured at the University of Pretoria. And before that, she was with Deloitte, Senior Manager at Deloitte. And she's been involved with the Mustek audit for many, many years, knows the people, knows the business, and it was quite easy for her to fit in once she's joined us on a permanent basis. So that's the group. And again, apology for the missing audio in the introduction. But if I'm not mistaken now, I'm going to just carry on where we left off and then hand over now to Niels. And Niels will just maybe go into a bit more detail on the distribution side of the business, what we're all about, and the brand certificates we do represent in the local environment. So yeah, Niels, if you can carry on with that, then I'll appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Owen. Just by way of introduction and the way of background, maybe, Mustek started off as a PC component distributor way back in 1987, and then basically carried on with that until 2006. At that point, the focus was mainly on 4 products: the Mesa PC, the Toshiba notebook, the NEC server, and the Brother printer. But at that point, we decided to become a broad-based distributor, and we started adding various products to our portfolio. The aim was, and today still is, to do more with the same infrastructure, and therefore taking advantage of the economies of scale. Traditionally, we've concentrated on the edge or client portfolio, as you can see here on the slide. But over the years, we've diversified and established our business in other areas, such as gaming, cloud and software, network and infrastructure, sustainable energy, security, and specialized IT training. The specialized IT training is done by a subsidiary of Mustek, like Hein mentioned earlier, called Mesa Inter-Ed, and their contribution to the group is growing nicely, and we are quite excited about this, of their prospects, as their virtual offering obviously have a lot of growth opportunities. Looking at all of these brands, you might not be familiar with all of them, but we generally prefer niche brands that are not overtraded, because these brands give ourselves and our customers the opportunity to make a slightly higher margin compared to some of those overtraded brands. Just one example is a brand like Huawei that we started distributing way back about 11 years ago in South Africa. It took us a while to establish the brand and to get the traction, but over the last 5 years or so, Huawei started contributing very well to our growth, and we believe that there's still a lot of growth to come from this brand. These brands are all carefully selected, and we continuously evaluate this portfolio. Non-performing brands are discontinued, and new complementary brands are added to the portfolio. We always try to limit the competition between products as far as possible. And we rather look for those products that can enhance and strengthen this portfolio. 2.5 years ago, we all became very aware of COVID-19, and it changed all of our lives, and lockdowns and a lot of uncertainty followed. Unfortunately, some industries and some businesses were not spared. But fortunately for us, the IT industry was one of the beneficiaries. We grew our revenue by 26% in 2021 and a further 11% in 2022. And I think there was a lot of questions whether or not this was just a spike or whether the market size has actually increased. But I think it's safe to say that at this point, it looks like the market size has definitely increased. And we also expect the replacement cycle of some of the machines that was bought at the beginning of the pandemic to start in the next year or two. During this time, we also had various supply chain challenges, including component shortages and shipping delays. But although not completely back to the pre-COVID levels, we've seen a lot of improvement in the last quarter. The shipping costs are starting to come down, and the lead times for laptops are improving from around 6 to 8 months at its peak to about 2 to 3 months currently.
If I think, maybe just, Niels, I don't know if you've
Yeah,
got a bit
no.
more to go.
You can
But if
go.
I can just maybe, because I know a lot of people will ask, from a, from the supply chain point of view, what's happening out there. I think a couple of things that we've noticed, and I think Niels has mentioned it, it is getting better, but it's not even close to pre-COVID levels. A couple of things, if you just talk about, when people ask about the effect that Ukraine might have, Ukraine is one of the biggest suppliers of raw materials in the world that's used in the manufacturing of chips. The one example that I've got is neon gas, and that's used in cleaning the chips. Very difficult to get hold of. The other challenge that we've seen now is the railway line between China and Europe goes through Russia and Ukraine. That used to ship about anything between 60 and 80,000 containers per annum. That railway line is not functional, and all those containers got to come through the harbors. So we've got huge congestion in the harbors coming in and out of Hong Kong, and same with Europe as well. From a cost point of view, I think Niels have mentioned that the costs are improving. Pre-COVID, a 40-foot container will cost you about probably $6,000-7,000 to get it from Hong Kong down to Durban. During COVID, it went up to $18,000 if you could get. And now we're back to about $9,500 per container. So it's getting better. The availability is becoming better, but it's not even remotely close. So from a components point of view, generally it's improved substantially, but it's vendor dependent. There are still some vendors that's battling to get components, and then obviously we're battling to get those components down here, or even the complete product. But I think if you just look at the normal PC, improved quite a lot, not perfect. We've actually had an oversupply of entry-level notebooks, which we'll explain just now, during the month of May and June. It was also part of the disruption. Suddenly there's a lot of stock available, they ship, it lands up here. It was only supposed to come in July, August and September, and everything lands up here in May and June. And then obviously we've got to work it through the system. The sanctions of the US, I believe there's some indication that Mr. Biden, or the President Biden, are looking at introducing additional sanctions. We're not sure what the extent of that's going to be and how it's going to affect us. I think we're probably going to have the same view as the Dells and the HPs of the world, is that we'll have to wait and see, wait for the detail and see how that's going to affect us, if at all. And then from China, still with a zero COVID policy, we are still seeing some big cities being locked down if there's an outbreak of COVID in that environment. And that's not over yet, and that can probably still cause some disruptions going forward. Air freight is a lot easier now. I think as a lot more passenger planes are taking to the air and coming down here, that obviously all of them carry a certain amount of cargo in any case. So we've seen that relaxing a bit. So we're moving in the right direction, but we're not out of the woods yet. We still see that for the next 12 to 18 months, I think there's going to be disruption in the market. If you look at it from a chip point of view, a lot of fabrics are being commissioned now by the likes of Intel and various others. That normally takes a couple of years to become operational. And I think they added that challenge that some of them might have is, where they used to historically used to build fabrics as was in an area where there's limited earthquakes and lots of water. I think with the pressure that they're experiencing now, the lots of water is becoming an issue, and they need to have a look at the whole manufacturing process, because they can't afford to use the amount of water in the manufacturing process than what they used to in the past. And I think those are all valid reasons, and things that everybody needs to consider. And we'll get to it now a bit later, some of the opportunities we do have. But solar and green energy and being green, I think there's a lot of opportunities for the IT industry as a whole going forward as well. So in short, getting better, but we're not out of the woods yet. So yeah. Shavana, will you then carry on with maybe some of the financials?
Thank you, Hein. Thank you, Niels. So thank you, everyone. Good morning. What the slide that you have in front of you, we're on slide 9 at the moment, is just a 5-year overview of our financial results. I will go into the growth in revenue, but as you can see, we've been growing with revenue quite nicely since 2020. Our EBITDA for the year was impacted slightly, or was impacted in 2022, and the two biggest reasons for that was, number one, the GP percentage did drop from 14.9% to 14.3%, and the other biggest impact on our EBITDA was our forex losses. So if you have a look at our detailed financial results, you would see that our forex in 2021 we had a 10 million rand forex gain, whereas that shifted to a 73 million rand forex loss. So there's almost an 80 million rand forex swing in there, which is pretty much makes up your movement in your EBITDA. Headline earnings per share, as Hein alluded to earlier on, staying strong, and just impacted with the drop in profit. Our return on equity is still double digits, and we're quite pleased with that. Looking at the revenue in detail, so our growth, I think what's something that we're quite proud of is that our growth in revenue being on top of the 26% increase that we had in 2021 is organic growth and based on our current business. And I think the biggest reasons for our growth in revenue is that since COVID, I think it was last year or 2021 was remote learning and remote working, and that's sort of shifted a bit with companies now realizing that digital transformation and then being able to remain relevant is quite important, and that comes with increasing of networking and speed. So we're seeing quite a demand in that, but demand still remains beyond in the remote working, remote learning space as well. As Niels also gave you a nice high-level overview of our products and our IT stack, I think that also has well positioned us for our growth in revenue and has been a key player. And then again, availability of inventory, as Hein just alluded to, the supply shortages and me not being out of the woods, having that available inventory and being able to close or do the sales has been a key player in our revenue growth. On slide 11, we just look at a high level of our gross profit margin over the years. And yes, we did drop from 14.9% in 2021 to 14.3% in the current or the 2022 financial year. And the biggest impact on that, or the margin pressure, came through in H2, where there was an oversupply of entry-level notebooks. And as Hein explained earlier on, it was orders that we had in the system forecasted and based on the lead times that we had seen previously, and that all those orders came in earlier, which then resulted in us being a bit overstocked, and or the market being overstocked, and there being some margin pressures. Also, 2021 there was massive supply shortages, so there was pricing power, and that has slightly trailed off with the oversupply in the market. OPEX as a percentage of sales, I think we have done really well. I think, we've been really good in this. And as Niels mentioned as well, is that we are trying to do more with the current infrastructure. And this graph really represents that quite well with our operating expenses as a percentage of sales coming down very nicely. So operating expenses nicely well controlled. There was some higher than inflationary expenses, obviously, such as fuel and stuff, which we managed to control also well. If you look at the absolute number of operating expenses, that was up by 7%, but as a percentage of sales is coming down. HEPS, as I mentioned earlier on, impacted by, that's grown significantly since 2020 and impacted, that's earnings growth. And HEPS is holding up nicely. The dotted line just gives you an indication of our weighted average number of shares in issue at year end based on our share buyback program. Looking at dividend per share, also nice growth. We've maintained a 20% payout ratio on dividends, which we're also quite pleased with. This graph just shows us the PE ratio over the past couple of years. And just, looking at this, our PE ratio has halved since 2016. Tangible net asset value. So I think there's a lot of acronyms in here and we probably need to explain it. So tangible net asset value, TNAV, that has doubled over the past 4 years or 5 years. And I think on top of this year, we paid out probably about a R1.70 dividend on top of that we've given back to shareholders. So I think growth has been pretty positive. As Hein mentioned earlier on around the orders coming in early on, especially on the entry-level notebooks, our inventory levels at the end of June 2022 were pretty high, probably one of the highest inventory levels that we've had. 2.1 billion rand worth of inventory on hand with about approximately 400 million rand of inventory in transit. And that was mainly due to the oversupply of entry-level notebooks during the second half or pretty much Q4 of 2022. Hein did allude to the supply chain issues with the lead times improving, but there is still constraints on supply chain, especially with logistics. Moving on to slide 18 with our trade receivable days. So even though there was a slight increase in trade receivable days from the prior year, we're still pretty much within our range of 55 days. And I think the positive on this is that our debtors are still paying us. Cash flow, looking at cash flow, our cash generated from operations. So I think the message that I'd like to pass on with this is that despite our EBITDA dropping, increase in working capital, we were able to maintain positive cash flows, which has been very positive. We're good. I would now hand over to Hein, who would go through our strategic priorities and opportunities. Thank you.
Thanks, Shabana. Thanks, Niels, as well. Yeah, just on the first slide is just from a management point of view, and the three of us, and obviously the extended group of management as well. What are we going to be focusing on the next financial year specifically, and maybe a year or two later? We do believe that there's huge potential in some of our investments in the associates. There's quite a bit of work that needs to be done there, and I think we can get it right and get them to a position where they can start contributing to the bottom line of the company, and in the line with what they used to be historically. So we are working on it. We've got some plans, but we still need to execute on those. And I think if they start contributing the way they should, that'll go a long way in making sure that from a diversification point of view, the earnings is a bit more secure going forward. Working capital management, I think we've focused a lot on it now. Shabana's got quite a few slides on it. That's quite key in our business. I mean, that's what drives our business. If you look at our margins, it's pretty thin. We can't afford to, and unfortunately, we haven't got it wrong substantially in the past. So working capital, continuous focus, getting the receivable, getting the inventory in, doing the sales, and getting paid for it, as Shabana has alluded to. So if you look at evaluation of new products, that's also continuous. There are some with some, we believe, great growth potential, and maybe I can just go into a bit more detail once we get into the opportunities. But there's still some exciting stuff happening in our industry. It's not just same old, and yes, suddenly you've got bigger demand, and you deliver on that, and if demand disappears, what happens to your business? I think we're well positioned for some initiatives that we do believe is going to be, it's got big potential in the foreseeable future, immediate and foreseeable future. Software distribution, we've touched on it, Niels has touched on it a bit there. It's a division that we've started a couple of years ago. We've seen some nice traction there, and a lot of the focus on that division is around the cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is real. I think a lot of organizations have realized now with this work from anywhere, how exposed they are in that type of environment. Once everything was in-house, the organizations tended to secure it quite well. They felt comfortable. They know where their assets are. They know what's on their assets. And now suddenly people are all over the place and they're dialing in from different areas. And how secure are those devices? And we do believe that that's going to be, well, number one, it's a big threat for every business out there. And number two, gives us as the industry a lot of opportunities to try and assist the customers to secure their assets, which is basically their IP and their technology assets to the extent of possible. Training, I think we've alluded to in the beginning, huge opportunities there. Shortage skill in South Africa, not only South Africa, worldwide is enormous. It's a bit of a challenge retaining those skills, to be perfectly honest with you, because what we've seen is some of the professionals, and I'm talking about the trainers that's doing the training for us, they're getting offered enormous packages from overseas companies, and then as the world have changed, they can actually sit here. They don't have to immigrate. They just change their work day, and instead of working in our normal working day from 8 to 5, they start working at say 12 o'clock at night, and till 8 o'clock in the morning they train in the east, or alternatively they do it later in the evening or in the early mornings to the west. So it's a bit of a challenge to retain those guys, but I think we've got to continuously invest in and some huge opportunities there. On the ERP implementation, it's something that we've embarked on about 2-3 years ago, just to make sure that we're ready for the future. Our legacy system has become really cumbersome and difficult to manage and expensive to manage. So hopefully we can implement that successfully in the near future. And like I said, just to position ourselves for the future, because e-commerce is going to be a reality, and it doesn't mean e-commerce to the consumer; it's just e-commerce directly to our reseller base. So that's not complete yet; it's coming, but the base we still need to implement, and that should happen over the next couple of weeks or so, hopefully. And then, quite important for us to maintain our triple B EE level 1, which have actually just got certified now, and we still do it. And the main reason for that is obviously there are legal requirements, or not legal requirements, regulatory requirements to comply with all the rules and regulations, but it also gives us or our customers level 1 that they'll be dealing with, and give them additional points that they can use in their scorecards. And so I think that's from a strategic priority point of view. Now the opportunities, so I think that's where I was told by the people that guide us here now, I need to sound a bit more optimistic and all that, but I think it's a great opportunity, so I am optimistic. The opportunities for us as the industry and us as the company is obviously from a cybersecurity point of view. As I mentioned now, it's real. The threats are real. We've seen in the local environment some of the state-owned enterprises being attacked. I'm pretty sure there's other organizations that felt the same. Maybe it wasn't published to the extent, but it's real. It's a real threat. I mean, if you just look at what we as an organization are spending to try and protect us, and I use the word try because it's quite difficult, and I don't think anybody can say they will ever be fully protected from any cybersecurity act, because it's unknown territory to all of us, but there's a lot of product there that can assist people to the extent possible to protect their assets. Cloud solutions, same thing. I mean, it goes hand in hand. I think Shabana's mentioned about the digitization, the work from home, a lot more electronic, stuff that needs to be saved, stored, and be able to retrieve, and also in a safe environment. In our own organization, again, we don't sign off any leave forms anymore. We don't sign any approvals of travel claims or entertainment claims, all done electronically. And I think that's the way the world's going to go. So it's a safer environment, but those assets or that information needs to be protected. Increased infrastructure and network size. I think, with this work from home, I think a lot of organizations have realized that, as I discussed earlier, that while it's under one roof, we can protect it, and we can protect it successfully, but that has changed. And yes, maybe just killing fires over the last 2 years, making sure that the people that are working from anywhere have got access and are safe and can actually execute on what they should be doing on a daily basis. We do see a lot of organizations revisiting their own infrastructure and making plans of how we're going to catch up, because it wasn't necessarily, the infrastructure spend wasn't necessarily happening over the last 2 years. Well, firstly, the people weren't at the office to do it. But as people return to work, to make sure how we safeguard all these assets, have a look at the assets we've got in-house. I mean, there's a lot of organizations still out there that's got old XP ERP apps that they're running their organization on, those are so exposed, it's actually quite ridiculous. And fortunately for us as the industry, you know, the software you're going to require and need to protect yourself has got a need for hardware. You have to upgrade. And I think Niels also mentioned earlier about the install base. That's quite exciting for us as well. I think, you know, just use an example as a cell phone. Once you've got a cell phone, very few people give it back and say, listen, I can't live without this. If anything, you want the newest version, you want the latest, greatest, you want the smarter, faster, better camera, and we see the same in the IT industry. So a lot of people has been exposed to notebooks or desktops for that matter, or tablets. You know, some of those devices are 2.5, 3 years old. They should be coming to, at some point in time, coming back into the market for replacement, and typically it'll be an upsell. So you won't necessarily have an i3 anymore. You want an i5 or an i7. So I think those are some opportunities for us, great opportunities for us in the immediate future. And then sustainable energy, and I think there, you know, we've just signed up with Huawei Digital Power. They're one of the, if not the biggest, solar power players in the world. They've established themselves now in South Africa as well. And I think the advantage for us as a company, if you look at the Mesa brand, and then inverters and batteries, which is probably all over, that was more designed and brought in for the small office, home office, for the home user, you know, for the 1 or 2 devices or 3, just to get through the 1 or 2, 3 hours of load shedding, or where there is trouble with the power supply. Where this is actually helping us now is the larger projects. And we've seen a lot of announcements of huge projects going around. You know, the mines looking at alternative energy, or maybe going off the grid, some larger corporates. Never mind the risk that we've got now with load shedding. It's also, I think, from a responsibility point of view, and a greener energy and contribution to a safer and a cleaner society. A lot of initiatives there. And it's worldwide. It's not only a South African phenomenon. We see it worldwide. In China, you know, the solar plants that's going up there is phenomenal. So I think that positions us well on the sustainable energy side, is to being able to play in the larger projects, which historically maybe we definitely weren't able to play in. And then on the new brands, I think I mentioned one now, and like Niels said, we're continuously looking at new brands. So the one that I mentioned now is obviously the Huawei and the digital power solutions. We're pretty excited. I think that can be a big one. Might take a year or 2, 3. You know, if you look at Huawei, it took us 11 years, but it's a $1 billion business for us. More than $1 billion, probably closer to 1.5 if I bring the devices into play as well. And hopefully this can get there as well. It's larger projects, so it's not necessarily 1s and 2s, but I mean that can get the dashboard clicking quite quickly. And then the other one is, which is quite exciting, and Recton has actually brought that in, is a brand called DJI. It's drones. They're one of the, I think they're one of the biggest manufacturers of drones in the world. We think that drone technology, well, we know drone technology has improved substantially over the last couple of years. The applications are enormous in the local environment, where we just brought in a demo kit to demonstrate. The mines are pretty excited. Corporates are pretty excited. The farming community, agriculture, you know, just to, instead of having to drive the fences, you send the drone and go and check the fences. You can count your animals. You can do a security check. You know, just fly over at any time of day or night, and just see if there's not something untoward. You know, if you look at dangerous animals on the organization, that, you know, on the farm itself. And then quite interesting is, you know, the proof of concept that they've done with I think it was maize farmers in Europe, where they actually used the drone technology to identify if there's any sicknesses, to identify if there's any parasites or insects destroying the crops, and then doing the spraying. I mean, some of those drones that we've seen now that we've brought in can carry up to 40 kgs, so that should be 40 liters. I don't know how big an area you can spray with 40 liters, but you can do that, and just by keeping tractors out of the lands, they've increased their yield by 5% in certain instances, and some even as high as 10%. So I think the applications there for drone technology is well, firstly, there's a lot of applications that will be written, but where it's going to be used, I think is quite exciting. It's just read something in the papers, I think it was yesterday or this morning, where in the US, where they gave permission where deliveries can be done by drones. So if you order your takeaways, You know, with drone technology that can be delivered exactly where you ordered it from. So that's pretty exciting for us as the industry. So it's on the Huawei side, on Mustek, and then the DJI on the Recton side. So I think there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in our industry still. We positioned, we believe, quite well to get the benefits of it as and when it appears in the market. So all things being equal, I think we've done well, and we'll. I'm pretty excited about the future. Yes, there is some questions. Sorry.
Right, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. This is Aki Anastasiou coming to you from the control room. We're going to be facilitating the questions to all of you. Well done, great results. And we start with the first question this morning. And for those of you watching us online, if you want to post any of your questions, please do so on the chat channel in Teams. First question comes in from Alexander Dace, looking at the growth potential over the medium term for Mesa Inter-Ed.
Niels, maybe you've got some, you know, if you look at it from a profitability point of view, I think there's some good opportunities there. From a revenue point of view, a lot of the training gets done now online, and we're going to encourage that going forward as well. From a facilities point of view, we actually, at this stage, classroom-wise, we're a bit limited, and we are looking at alternatives. But that business can, I don't want to say substantial, because they're going to define the same sort within the group. But I mean, they're doing about, what, 80 million turnover now. I mean, I don't think, you know, over the next year or 2, 3, that should be going to up to about 150 or somewhere around there. And I think the difference there between us and the normal distribution business is the margins are quite handsome. So we're pretty excited that that business over next 2 or 3 years could potentially double.
Fantastic. There's a question here from Dean Clotleng. Hein, you did touch on earlier on the inventory that you have in stock and you know, the supply chain and getting some of the stuff early. Dean's question is, to what extent have inventory levels normalized subsequent to year end? And can you please give us some more detail on those aging, the aging of the inventory balance?
I'm not sure about the aging and the inventory balance, but maybe if I can just give you some how we've been trading subsequent to year end. If you look at July and August, both Mustek and Recton, the trading has still been very good. Mustek, the margins have expanded as we're recovering some of the forex losses that was booked. You know, we're selling at a high selling price now, and it was booked in a lower exchange rate in May and June. Recton, their margins haven't really expanded, still pretty much the same. They've got quite a few more challenges from entry-level notebook side and what the Mustek division had, but that's slowly but surely working through it. Working through it. So I think by the end of October, November, I think that should have been flushed through the system. If not, you know, back to school and December holidays, I think should take care of that stock. So from a Recton point of view, the margin's still a bit under pressure. From a Mustek point of view, the margin have expanded quite nicely in July and August.
Yes, and if I can just add on the aging of inventory on that portion, I mean, our aging of inventory is managed very well, and there's adequate provision on anything that we think might be aged or, you know, carried at higher than NRV. We do provide for that adequately in our financials.
Yeah, and I think we go line by line there. We don't have a policy after certain months, it's this and that. If we can't sell it for what is in the books, we write it down. And our provision, I think it's in the financial statements. What's the total provision?
About 150 million for the group.
150 million, so I think we adequately provided it.
Great stuff. Another question coming through anonymously. Somebody says that there's a prepayment on your balance sheet of 20 million. What is that 20 million rand on your balance sheet?
Before Shabana asks, it's not bonuses to management. I wish it was.
No, so the 20-odd million that's sitting as a non-current prepayment on our balance sheet relates to a solar project that we are currently, or the Midrand office is currently busy with. So if you've driven past our Midrand offices on the highway, you would see a whole lot of solar panels on our roof. That was installed a couple of years ago, and you know, that was pretty much covering about 20 to 30% of our current daily usage. In the prior financial year, we made a decision to, obviously with the current load shedding and the price of electricity going the way it is, we made a decision to upgrade our solar project and as well as install backup solution. So we pretty much going to be trying to go being very conservative, probably 70 to 80% of the mid-rand daily consumption will be off grid, and then we've got about a 2 megawatt backup solution that we've installing to take us through pretty much when there's no sun. So yeah, we're quite excited about that, and hopefully that system should be online by mid-November, early December.
Thank you. There's a question here from Ernest Kaplan, one of your analysts. Revenue growth has slowed quite a lot from a very strong 2021. There's no doubt that 2021 is very strong. How are you seeing things developing so far into financial year 23? And do you think it's going to accelerate a lot further, or are you expecting another great year?
Well, if you look at July and August, the trading has still been robust. We've had some of the best Julys and August in, I think, ever. So the demand's still there. The product is available. To tell you what the revenue growth is going to be is quite difficult, and a couple of factors that will affect us. The rand-dollar exchange rate, all things being equal, the demand the same. The rand still sitting at 17 rand 50. In theory, we should see growth, right? In rand terms, at least. Just from a cost of product point of view, we've had some indication from some of our suppliers and some of our larger suppliers that we can and do expect some price increases on components, some as early as the end of October, some a bit later, and anything between 2 and 5%, sometimes it's, well, the one is actually 15%, increase in dollar price of that, which would obviously then increase the selling price of the units as well. So two things: rand-dollar exchange rate, dollar price of components, and demand. If the demand stays where it is, dollar stays where it is now, we will recover the forex losses and the revenue will increase. But the dollar price increases will also increase the cost of the product, which will obviously increase the top line. So difficult to say what it's going to be, but from the demand that we're seeing, we're still optimistic it can be growth. Are we going to see a 26% or so growth? I think without acquisitions, it's probably optimistic to think it's the case, but I think there is opportunities for us to still grow by double digits.
Fantastic. We've got quite a few questions to get through. There's an anonymous question here. It says, why do you think Mustek is so undervalued compared to the market at the moment? And what are your plans for share buybacks? I think your PE ratio is 3.5 at the moment, which is sitting very attractively.
Difficult to comment on why we're being rated so long. I think there were some issues in the past about the predictability of earnings, and it's mainly got to do with the forex. You know, one year you've got a forex profit, then you've got a forex loss. I think that was one of the reasons. In the industry, I think historically there were some concerns about inventory levels, and then you've got too little, then you've got too high. But that is made. It's not our job to determine the share price. I think where we're coming from is, there's a lot of analysis that's getting done, and then people say, but we think this is a fair price. We don't have to analyze the business. We know what the business is all about, and we do believe that the best buy for us, if we've got spare cash, is ourselves. We're buying ourselves at a 3 or 4 PE, and we're not there to go and buy up the share price. If anything, we'd like to buy as cheap as possible, but we'll wait. If there's volumes in the market, we will take it, and we're going to continue with that program. And we're buying our own assets at, 60% of NAV. So the discussions that we've had with some of our larger shareholders in the past, and they've been encouraging us and said, listen, well, per them, it's a no-brainer. Are we going to be re-rated and or not? I don't know. Does it really make a big difference in our lives? Yes, maybe from an individual point of view, the options, could be worth more and it'll be nice, but we don't use the shares to do acquisition, all that. So wherever the share price is where the share price is, and that gets determined by the market. So it's nice if the share price do increase, but I mean that's what we're driving. Yeah, we're driving the business and try and get the maximum return for all shareholders, regardless of what the share price is.
Right, next question coming in from Dean Slotling. How much of the revenue growth since 2019 would you attribute to increased volumes versus pricing? It's a great question.
Well, if you look at, okay, maybe if I can just answer that. If you look at the pricing from a dollar term over the last 2-3 years, it's been fairly flat. If you look at the 21, and probably about 10.5 months of 22, the rand-dollar exchange rate has been fairly stable around the 14 to 14 rand level. So the bulk of that was increased demand.
Great, thank you very much. Let's have a look at a question that's come in from Tinashi. Tinashi wants to know if you can advise whether the FX loss is realized or unrealized, and would you look to do share buybacks?
Okay, I can take the Forex. So if the breakdown of our Forex loss, a majority of that, I think 73 million is the total. In that there's probably about 80 million that's unrealized. So that's revaluation of payables at year end based on the exchange rate that was 16.41.
Yeah, Heinz mentioned before that we'll continue with the buybacks. There's no asset that we can buy currently in the market for at the 3.5 PE, at the 60% discount to NAV. I mean, it's just not available, not in our industry. So for as long as that situation remains, and it's earnings enhancing for the company or for the group, and we've got surplus cash available, we will definitely continue. Well, and also shareholders' approval is needed. So as long as those are available, I think we need to continue.
Yeah, and I think with the assessment, okay, maybe with the assessment as well, we're not going to sacrifice the dividends necessarily to do share buybacks. You know, our policy has been, and we've stuck to it the last couple of years, is at least 20% of earnings will be distributed as dividends, and if there's additional cash, then we'll use it as share buybacks. Because we do believe that the benefit of share buybacks is permanent. You know, just giving it out as dividend is temporary.
Okay, we have got around about 7 minutes to go. So if you have any more questions, anybody that's listening on the audience, please do post them on that link in the chat channel in the Q&A. But here's a question that's come in from Alexander Dace. He would like to know about the David Kahn Trust, whether this trust is planning to sell shares, and if so, the potential impact on the BBBE rating.
At this stage, Alex, no, the trust has got no desire to sell any shares. If you look at how the trust was rated in the past, they look at the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries of the trust is still exactly the same, so it doesn't affect our BE rating or the shareholding of it. The trustees is basically of the trust is myself, Michael Kahn, which is David's oldest son, and his daughter, Vicky. Yeah, so I'm involved there as well, and I'll advise them against, and they're quite happy not to. But yeah, there's no desire or requirement to sell any of those shares, and I think it's still pretty safe.
There's a question here about your new ERP system. That's the target of implementation is October 2022. Can you please provide us more progress on this implementation of your new ERP system?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. It is the 1st of October or 2nd of October, that first Monday of October is the planned go live date. I mean, we are from next week doing final testing, final load testing with all employees. So hopefully all goes well. If not, we'll continue testing, because at this point in time, we just don't want to risk the business or risk going live with a system that's not giving us what we intended to give us. So yes, at this point in time, still planning for October, but yeah, if we're not 100% satisfied, we might move out the date. But I think all in all, fairly confident to say that we believe that in this financial year, we will go live.
Great stuff. Now, there are lots of different questions around Sizwe and people wanting information around Sizwe. What is the way forward with Sizwe?
Well, we are in discussions. Well, there's a couple. One you can dispose of or acquire. At this stage, we have had initial discussions with the other shareholders, which is AO, to get some indication of willingness. We're still waiting for some feedback on willingness to dispose their shareholding within Sizwe. But as soon as I've got more concrete answers, I'll get back to you. But the discussions have started. I think it'll be difficult to get somebody to buy a total, because he's still going to need AO to be willing to sell. So first price, well, not first price, but I mean, I think to turn it around, it'll be my first choice is maybe to take AO out make some changes, and then either, if need be, get some other partners involved, or then take it forward from just with Mustek as a shareholder. You know, I mean, what, 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, I mean, they were making 30-40 million rand profit, after tax profit per annum, and that unfortunately came under pressure. And yes, that's something that we need to address as a matter of urgency.
There was a restatement on your prior income statement. What did that relate to?
So I wonder if our auditors are listening. Yeah, so that was, it was specifically on our revenue and cost of sale line items. So we have cloud service products that we sell as part of the Microsoft stack. And it was concluded, there was a lot of discussion at the IFRIC, and there was a discussion paper that came out in May 2022 concluding that those type of products, we are acting as an agent as opposed to a principal. And what that means is that our revenue line item needs to reflect just basically our profit, as opposed to showing gross revenue and cost of sale. So that was, it was about a 43 million rand reduction in prior year revenue and a 43 million rand reduction in cost of sales, and thus no impact on cost of sales or earnings.
Great stuff. Okay, we're moving to our last question as we wrap up this morning. A question from Alexander again. There's a material decline in GP margin between H1 and H2. Can you please specify the reasons? And do you anticipate the GP margin expansion from H2 level for the upcoming financial year?
Yeah, I think if you look at that after the second half, I think we've tried to expand earlier, and it was a lot of it was in the last quarter of the financial year where we received quite a bit of stock that we basically had to get rid of, and that was done at lower margins than what we historically used to do in that. And it's also, you know, a bit of a mix between the different products, who's doing what in what segment. If you look at the first 6 months, phenomenal results from Meiser and some others, which is typically a higher margin business. Still great results in the second half, but not to the extent of the first. So it's a bit of a juggle there, but hopefully we can recover in this current 6-month period, like I discussed earlier. Mustek's recovering margins quite well. Recton's a little bit under pressure.
Fantastic. A big thank you to all the attendees and your questions that are coming through. As Mr. Engelbrecht mentioned earlier, any questions that you want more clarity on, the executive team will be available to answer those questions offline as well. So from our side in the control room, Mr. Engelbrecht, it's over to you and your closing thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, just thank you everybody for all support all the years, and and thank you for making the time and effort to listen to us. Hopefully we've got a story that you like. We enjoy being here. We're still hopefully going to be around for a while, and hopefully we can keep on delivering some fairly decent, if not great, results in the future. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.